Alright, so to build the ice spike particle effect, I would rather need a single base model of the ice spike and not a cluster of spikes that you are seeing over here. This was just meant for some rough ideas. I would rather need a single clean base model, so I will prompt for a single ice mesh to generate that. From here I will choose the concept images I like most and convert them from image to 3D. Alright, so here is the 3D mesh. I'm going to texture it. I also added one more variation. You can also retopologize the mesh to make even optimized version of this if you want. So once the mesh is imported in the editor, I will create a new Niagara system. Okay, so the first step over here is to add a mesh renderer and assign our ice spike mesh. So I will remove the modules that we are not going to need in this emitter. So next I'm going to scale the mesh incrementally because the ice spikes are going to gradually rise from the ground. So in the scale mesh size module, I will add a float from curve and gradually increase the curve value. The initial mesh orientation module is going to randomize the mesh placement along multiple orientation vectors. Instead of using a spawn rate, I will switch to a spawn burst instantaneous module so that all spikes appear at once. Now I will duplicate the emitter and tweak a few of its properties to get a variation, which helps the overall effect feel more natural and dynamic. In the material of the mesh, I will add a particle color and add it in the emissive channel so that I can customize the color of the mesh directly from the emitter. Now I am going to add another emitter. Let's choose the hanging particles template. This will introduce some subtle icy sparks that appear around the meshes as they spawn. Okay, so here is the lump of ice ground mesh I generated in Meshy. This looks fine over here, but let's see how we can make the most out of it in our existing Niagara system. So I added another Niagara emitter and in the mesh renderer I added this ground mesh. I'm going to continue customizing this further, tweaking the emitter properties until we get the desired result. Next, I used Meshy to generate some cool ice debris crystals that will burst out from the spikes when they erupt. Back in our Niagara system, I have added this directional burst emitter which will handle that. So in the mesh renderer, I am going to add our new debris mesh. I also added a collision module because these particles need to collide with the ground after bursting out. Okay, so the fundamental setup is ready. Now we just need to continue customizing the properties of the emitters until we get the desired result. I am planning to make further dedicated step-by-step tutorial videos on creating this kind of effect so that this process can be followed along more easily over there. In the meantime, if you want to take a look at this entire project, you can get the files by becoming a member on my Patreon. Okay, so the next particle effect I will create is a fireball projectile. For this, I generated some base fireball meshes in Meshy. At first glance, they look a bit rough, of course, but I'm not going to worry too much about that right now. In my Niagara emitter, I have assigned this mesh to the mesh renderer. Then to get that emissive boost, I'll set its color value very high to make it glow like a real fireball. To get it spinning, let's add an update mesh orientation module in the particle update section. This will make the mesh constantly rotate. Okay, so I'm going to add another emitter. This is going to add the sparks coming out of the fireball. I will customize the mesh emitter further, creating some non-uniform scaling and also having some random parameters in the rotation rate is going to make it look like multiple meshes are rotating at different rates. Okay, so now I'm going to adjust the color using the color from curve and also scale the color to push some emissive glow into the effect. Inside the material, I will add this Fresnel node to create that crisp outer glow for our fireball. Yeah, so this looks perfect so far. I'm going to create another emitter for the trail effect. I will use this dynamic beam template, which is a ribbon renderer basically. This update beam we don't need because I want some sort of motion in the particle update. I will delete that. So let's add an acceleration force. This gives the trail a bit of motion and direction, making the whole effect feel more dynamic and reactive. Next, I will tweak the color properties to match the color of the fireball and also adjust the beam width to change the shape of the beam. I will keep fine tuning this until I am happy with how the trail flows and blends with the rest of the effect. For our final mesh-based particle effects demonstration today, I am creating a portal. To give the portal a proper base shape, I generated this custom torus style mesh in Meshi. It's like a twisted ring with some extra depth and detail. Back in the Niagara system, this time I am using a static mesh location module that lets me spawn the particles directly along the surface of our torus mesh, so the particles perfectly trace the shape of the portal. So I will continue customizing the properties till we get to the final result. If you want to dive deeper into how to actually build this kind of portal from scratch, do check out my detailed tutorial on creating the iconic Doctor Strange portal effects.